Okay, we're going to start chapter 8 by talking about inequalities. An inequality is a relationship like an equal sign, but instead of equal, it might be less than, greater than, less than or equal, greater than or equal. And here's our symbols. But nevertheless, we still have that basic, some kind of equality relationship between the two sides. So really, they work exactly like equations, okay, because I have two definite sides. The only difference is instead of an equal sign, I'm going to have a less than or a greater than. Okay, so for the main part, they're going to work just like an equation. There's only two exceptions, right? And that is when you multiply through an inequality sign with a negative number, you got to change the direction of the sign. Okay, let's look at that for a second. Okay, so let's say we had -2 is less than 5. Okay, I can add 3 to both sides. I can add 3. That'll give me 1 is less than 8. That's still true, right? I can subtract 3 from both sides. That would give me -5 is less than 2. That's still true. So my properties of addition hold. Okay, I could multiply both sides by 3. -6 is less than 15, still true. But if I were to multiply both sides by -3 times -3 times -3, notice what happens. When you multiply by a negative, it changes the sign of your number, of course. A negative times a negative is now +6, and a positive times a negative, this side's now -15. So in order for our relationship to stay true, not only do I change the signs of the numbers, but I've got to change the sign of the inequality. Okay? So all the steps for solving a regular equation hold for inequalities, except if I have to multiply through by a negative, I got to change the direction of the inequality sign also. Okay, and we've already been practicing, we always want all our variables on the left-hand side. Here, when I'm working with inequalities, they have to be over here, right? They have to be over there. But that's okay, we've already been putting them over there. Okay, so there's one difference, and the way we are going to leave our answers is another difference. We're going to talk about interval notation. So here's an inequality, right? X less than or equal to. So what that means on the number line is at 2, here's the value where it actually equals 2. And then this is everything that's less than 2, right? So any of these solutions work. Now, we're going to say, because if it has the equal part, we're going to make this a bracket facing the direction. If it was just x is less than, I'm going to make x is less than, let's say 3. If I don't have the equal part, instead of a bracket, I'm going to put a parenthesis. This is the difference between whether we have the equal part or do not have the equal part. Okay, so here's what our graph looks like. Of course, that would continue like that. Here's what our graph looks like. And then we're going to start leaving our answer in interval notation, which looks a lot like the graph. If there's a bracket on 2, I'm going to have that here. Anytime we have an arrow, it means one of the infinities. So of course in this direction, since we're getting negative, 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 this is negative infinity. And if your arrow goes this direction, it's positive infinity. The infinities can never have a bracket. They have to have a parenthesis. because the parenthesis means that that number is not really included, remember? All the way up to and not included, that number, well, infinity is not a number. You can't include it, right? So it just means, oh, forever towards infinity. Okay, so this is stuff that we already just got through saying. So you can stop it and read over that if you want to. I'm going to just keep going for now. All right, here's the types of intervals, okay? If we have parentheses on both ends, you can call it an open interval. Technically, these terms you don't really need to know, just some basic information for you. Okay, and this means A is not included. This one means A is included, and everything greater than A. So you can also look over that chart if you want. All right, let's just get right to it. So I'm going to solve this inequality. Okay, it's the exact same steps as solving an equation. I would get rid of fractions first, and then parentheses, simplify each side, put all my x's on the left-hand side, undo what's being added or subtracted to the variable. So let's add 5 to both sides. So I'd have x is greater than 6. And once you get the x all by itself, you're done. That's it. It's just like an equation. Here's your inequality notation. If you needed to graph it, you find the number 6 because, and look, the arrow's pointing that way. This arrow is pointing that way. That's the way I need to face my parenthesis or my bracket. And it's going to be a parenthesis because I don't have the equal part. So a parenthesis, draw an arrow that way. And my interval notation will look just like this. I'll have a parenthesis on the 6, and then there's an arrow, which means infinity. So it always gets a parenthesis. Interval notation, graphical notation, inequality notation. Okay, so pay attention to how it's asking you to leave your answer. Okay, here's another one. It's an inequality. It's just like an equation though. I'm going to divide both sides by 4, trying to get that x all by itself. So x is less than or equal to negative 25. Okay, so I'm going to find negative 25, which is right here. This arrow is pointing that way, so that's the way I'm going to face my bracket this time. Okay, and my interval will look just like this. I've got an arrow, so that's a negative infinity, which always gets a parenthesis, and then I've got a negative 25 with a bracket on it. Okay, trying to get the x all by itself on the left-hand side, so I'm going to divide by negative 9. Now this is where we have to be careful when it's an inequality. Really, you do this with an equal sign too, but when you flip an equal sign, it doesn't matter, right? So this changes this term to a positive number instead of a negative, so I got to change that. And it changes this to a positive also instead of a negative. Okay, now this arrow's facing that way, so that's the way I'm going to put my parenthesis. And this is what my interval will look like. Arrow means infinity. Infinity always gets parenthesis. Okay, they stepped it up quite a bit from one problem to the next, didn't they? But it doesn't matter because it's just like an equation. Okay, first step, get rid of parentheses. So let's distribute this 6. So I have 6x minus 6 plus 3x greater than or equal to negative x. Now don't forget it's really negative 3 we're distributing here. negative 3x minus 6. Okay, so simplify each side just like an equation. 9x minus 6 greater than or equal to minus 4x minus 6. Okay, put all your variables on the left-hand side. So 5x minus 6 greater than or equal to 0 minus 6. Undo anything being added or subtracted to the variable. Get a 0 on both sides here. So we have 5x greater than or equal to 0. Undo whatever's being multiplied to the variable. So x greater than or equal to 0. The arrow's pointing that way. So parenthesis or bracket? Bracket facing this way on 0. Come on, pen. Draw your arrow. All right, and then interval notation looks just like this. So I have a bracket on 0, positive infinity, with a parenthesis. Okay. Fractions. Wait, do I have an equality? Equal or less than or greater? I do. Get rid of the fractions. Awesome. Least common denominator is 4, so multiply everything by 4. Not inside parentheses, but remember to do everything. Okay, so here 4 divided by 4 just leaves 1 times x plus 3. Plus 2 times 4 is 8. 4 divided by 4 just leaves 3 times x plus 8. Get rid of parentheses, so I'm going to distribute that 1, which just leaves the x plus 3 plus 8. Distribute that 3, 3x plus 24. Okay, do any math you can do on each side. So x plus 11 less than or equal to 3x plus 24. Move all your variables to the left. They must be moved to the left if it's in an inequality. So negative 2x plus 11 less than or equal to 24. Undo whatever's being added to your variable. So negative 2x less than or equal to 13. Divide by negative 2. Whoops, dividing by a negative. Gotta change that sign. Okay, now for purposes of graphing it, I'm going to leave my answer as negative 13 halves, but for purposes of graphing it, I need to know what mixed number that is. So it's negative 7.5, right? Now, that's right here. This is 6.5, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. So it's right here. Arrow is facing that way, and it's a bracket. And my interval has a bracket on negative 13 halves. Wait a minute, 13 halves, that's 6.5. 6.5. Foo. Okay, 6.5, not 7.5. Okay, doesn't change this number, just messed me up on my graph. To infinity with a parenthesis. Okay, so linear equations and interval notation. I could also have a 3-part inequality, which is something we don't have with equations. Okay, so what this is saying is x plus 2 is in between 3 and 8. In other words, look at the direction of this sign. X plus 2 is bigger than 3, and at the same time, it's less than 8. Right? Okay. So that's just read in between. And the only thing we do, we leave the variable in the middle, and we undo whatever's being done to the variable. The only difference is I just do it to all three sides now. All three sides. So negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2 is less than x is less than 7. So this just means, hey, x is any number in between negative 2 and 7. Okay, so I'm going to find the negative 2 and the 7, and I'm going in between there. The only question is parentheses or brackets. Hey, it's going to both be parentheses, and they're going to face each other, of course, because I'm going to draw a line in between that negative 2 and 7. So it's everything in between there. And my interval will have a parenthesis facing this way on the negative 2, and a 7 with a parenthesis on it facing this way. All right, let's try that one more time. Okay, isolate the x, just add 4 to all three sides instead of a typical 2 sides. So I have 9 less than 3x less than 13. Divide by 3, just have to remember to do it to all three sides. So then we have 3 is less than x is less than 13 thirds. Okay, so 13 thirds is 4 1/3, right? 13 divided by 3 is 4 with 1 left over, 4 1/3. So once again, I want in between 3 and 4 1/3. I just have to figure out if I'm putting parentheses or brackets. Correct, parentheses. And that's what my interval looks like also. Okay, a 3 with a parenthesis, and then 13 thirds with another parenthesis. And that's it, linear inequalities.